to question 10, and I call the Honourable Member for Garff, Mrs Caine.
Thank you, Mr President. Just ahead of the question, could I reiterate the statement of potential personal pecuniary interest in this matter, as was printed on last month's question paper? But I'd like to ask the Minister for Infrastructure, pursuant to his answer to question 84 in Tynwald in September 2020, what the remaining capacity is at Wright's Pit North for the disposal of problematic construction waste, what the current rate of disposal each week is on average, what options are being considered for the interim and long-term disposal solutions for problematic construction waste once Wright's Pit North closes at the end of this year, and how this will comply with the Waste Strategy 2018.
Call the Minister for Infrastructure to reply, please.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, I can confirm that the site at Wright's Pit North was formally surveyed on the 22nd of May of this year. This survey indicated that at that time the remaining void space to the top of waste levels, as set out in the approved planning permission, was 14,400 cubic metres. Over the last 3 years, the site has received an average of 1,450 tonnes of waste per annum. This equates to an average of 28 tonnes of waste per week. As the Honourable Member will probably know, this consists largely of asbestos, man-made mineral fibres and plasterboard. In terms of a long-term solution, the Department is committed to the development of a fully engineered landfill facility for all types of problematic waste, including those currently managed at Wright's Pit North, as part of the range of waste treatment solutions that the island needs to maintain our social, economic and environment and well-being. This is in line with both the Programme for Government and the Waste Strategy, which includes a commitment that the island will aim to be self-sufficient in managing the waste it produces. This will include making provision for all the wastes in the agreed waste hierarchy, including those wastes for which there is no alternative other than disposal via landfill. There may be a need for short-term solutions to cover the period until the new facility is operational. There are a number of options for this, but I am committed to making sure that there are appropriate routes for the disposal of construction and demolition wastes. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mrs Caine.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. I thank the Minister for his answer, but I'm left a little in the dark. If it's 28 tonnes of, on average per week that are going to this facility, how much time would there be for disposing of such waste at that current rate? And my other one is more sort of fundamental than that. The waste strategy was only from 2 years ago. It said the residents and commercial and industrial sectors need to know that when waste is produced, there are facilities and schemes for its safe management and disposal. The department acknowledged the critical role played by the Energy from Waste plant for the disposal of residual waste and identified the need for a hazardous waste transfer facility and replacement problematic waste landfill. The hazardous waste transfer facility has now been developed and work is ongoing to identify a replacement problematic waste landfill space. Has work been ongoing for 2 years, longer? And why are we no further finding the solution? And if there isn't a solution and the Minister is determined to close this facility at the end of this year, what is going to happen to this waste?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. So, two parts to the Honourable Member for Garff, Mrs Caine's supplementary question. First, if I can just clarify, assuming a volume to weight ratio of 1 to 1.3, the 14,400 cubic metres of capacity equates to a site capacity of 17,500 tonnes of waste, which would give a 12-year life at current rates. In terms of the waste strategy, the Honourable Member is correct that this strategic waste landfill facility has been a matter of thought within the department for quite some time, and we haven't made as much progress with it to date as we had originally hoped. However, there is activity currently underway. I'm hopeful that a plan application will be lodged very soon. However, we are able to find some contingency arrangements should there be a gap between the the Wright Pit North facility closing and the replacement opening. Given the nature of the waste that we're talking about, which is asbestos, man-made mineral fibres and plasterboard, those can be stored in a transitionary arrangement in this gap. But it would have been, I would have far preferred for us not to be having to do that, and for the long-term solution to be in place. But that's not where we are currently, I'm afraid.
Honourable Member Mrs Lord Brennan.
Thank you, Mr President. And I'm conscious, before asking you this question, that this matter to do with waste strategy management has been going on for a long, long time. But I'm concerned about the progress being made. Is the Minister happy that the goals in the waste strategy are being advanced sufficiently? Is the approach, in fact, just to deal with identification of sites by way of planning applications? How can we make decisions if we don't have the strategy and the clarity? And can he comment on the idea of whether the intention is that silt from the Rockmount site or the other site at Peel will be used to cap the Wright's Pit site off? Thank you, Mr President.
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Number of elements in there. The situation, as I said to the Honourable Member for Garff, is I would have far preferred for us to be further advanced with the strategic waste landfill facility, but we're not, and we have to recognise that. We have a number of waste management challenges on the island currently. We do have a strategy, and that's been published, but there is room for improvement in that. And one of the areas that is a challenge is around these problematic waste that would need to go in the strategic waste landfill facility. Mrs Lord Brennan, Honourable Member for Council, has touched on what I think is question 2028, which may be a brave attempt to accelerate the answer to her question in the event that we run out of time on these questions. So I will come to talk properly about Rockmount and around Peel Silt at that time, Mr President. But all I can say in summary is that we are currently considering the options for the silt from Peel Marina.
Honourable Member Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Mr President. Can I ask the Minister, who I know believes passionately in the UNESCO biosphere, in evidence-based decision-making and in open, transparent government, can I ask the Minister whether the government scientists, the environmental health officer, the waste management experts' advice in respect to these decisions is available to Tynwald members through freedom of information or even just published by the department?
Minister.
Mr President, that's an extraordinarily broad question from the Honourable Member for Douglas Central there. I'm not quite sure exactly what information he's asking for me to comment on the public availability of, or for which decisions he is expecting that to be relevant.
We'll leave that for another time, Mr Thomas. Mrs Caine, supplementary.
So, thank you,
Mrs.
Mr
Caine.
President. I'll be specific to the question again. Please, can the Minister confirm? He said that at the current rate there'd be 12 years capacity. If so, why wouldn't he apply for an extension of time for this facility to remain there until they have an alternative site available for problematic waste? Not only does it seem to go against the waste strategy as published by his department and impacting on our biosphere status potentially if we don't have such a facility to dispose appropriately of waste, why would there be any increased cost to people if the facility weren't available? Would the contingency arrangements that he's talking of include storage or export, and is there a likely increased cost on people, and does the Minister feel that might actually impact on brownfield development in the future?
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Number of elements to that to that question. Taking the financial aspect first, if the department puts in contingency arrangements, then I do not think that that is a basis for the department to alter the charges to the people who are going to use the facilities. If waste is being disposed of currently and in a facility provided by the department, and the department changes that facility, whether it's a permanent change or a temporary change, there's no reason in my book for that to result in an additional charge to the people using the service. The situation with Wright's Pit North is complex. There is a long-standing commitment to the local community that the site will be closed and restored, and I am keen to ensure that that happens. We will be looking at how to make the best use of the void space, but this is still under consideration. One point that I would draw to honourable members' attention is that the current Wrights Pit North site is not an engineered site. Whilst it's been in use for many years, if we were to develop a landfill site for the disposal of waste, currently Wrights Pit North would not pass the test for that, and in fact the continued disposal of waste in Wrights Pit North would quite possibly have more of a negative impact on the biosphere strategy that the Honourable Member for Garff talks about, and the Honourable Member for Douglas Central also mentioned. Any site developed now would have much improved containment. Sites are now engineered to make sure that any liquids or leachate flowing from wastes, including as a result of rainfall, are collected and managed through a system of lining materials and pipework. So we have a facility, we have a legacy facility which it's been promised for many years would be closed. It is not fit for purpose going forward. We intend to close it, and I think that's actually better for our biosphere strategy, Mr. President.
I have two more questions. Mr. Hooper and then Mrs. Caine. Mr. Hooper, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. To my recollection, the original plan was to stop delivering waste to the site at the end of last year, 2019. We're now looking at planning permission expiring in just over 2 months, the end of 2020. It's very concerning that the department isn't any further along with this, and that we're now hearing about potential temporary storage during a transitional period. The Minister is well aware that his department has very recent history with temporary storage sites becoming permanent due to a lack of forward planning. So can the Minister please advise us on really what are we talking about here in terms of a temporary period, in terms of a transition period or a gap? How long is this going to be? Is it going to be a couple of months, a couple of years, a couple of decades? I think we need to have a much better understanding of what the department's plan is for this site and for future disposal of troublesome waste.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I would wholeheartedly agree with the sentiments expressed by my honourable friend from Ramsey. This has gone on too long, and it's very disappointing to be standing here not to be able to give the clarity to this honourable court that is required on such an important matter as how we manage our waste. We have to have solutions in place, not just from a biosphere point of view, but also from our international obligations, where we have to find satisfactory routes of disposal for the waste that we as a community create. The honourable member is asking, quite rightly, for timescales and for clarity around how we're going to move forward from here. What I will commit to, Mr. President, is rather than trying to answer those very broadly, I will come back to honourable members, quite possibly, if it's useful, with a presentation in the Brule Suite to outline how the department will move forward once it's got all its proverbial ducks in a row. But we need to resolve this. There is a link to the points made by the Honourable Member for Council, Mrs Lord Brennan. We have accepted waste for longer than was intended. There has been a planned application which was impacted by the COVID situation to extend that time of disposal. We need to bring it to an end, Mr. President. We need to be clear. There are a number of elements to this solution, and I'm quite happy to do as I've said and bring forward a coherent plan to share with honourable members.
Final supplementary, Mrs. Caine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two queries again. I really don't understand why the department would close a facility before it has got a contingency and when there is capacity at the existing site. But also, when he spoke about looking at the best use, options for the best use of the void space remaining there, can he confirm on the record that this will rule out silt from Peel? Because according to his own environmental statement given at the time of the Peel Lagoon, the Wright Pit North was ruled out as inappropriate for the disposal of such silt. So could he tell us that whatever future best use of that void space is, it will not be silt, and also why close it before you have even a temporary contingency arrangement? Thank you, Mr. President.
Reply, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. What I will say to the honourable member is that we clearly have to identify the contingency arrangements and have those in place before we remove the ability for people to dispose of waste through Wright Pit North. So that is a very pressing matter for the department. In terms of the Peel Silt, again, we're conflating the two questions. And as I said earlier, the long-term future of the Peel Silt has not yet been determined. It will not be disposed of as waste into the into Wright's Pit North. However, it may well be that the material, subject to proper finalisation of testing and the necessary approvals, may be suitable for the restoration activity to meet the commitment of bringing the levels at Wrights Pit North back to the level that it needs to be. So we will need to restore Wrights Pit North, and we need to look at the best way of doing that. But the clear commitment will be to only do that if the material would be satisfactory for remedial work. It will not be dumped in there full stop. But it may be that the scientific assessment of the material, now it's dried out, now it's dewatered, may open up other opportunities that weren't originally expected to be there. I can't make any commitments currently. It'll be based on scientific analysis, and any such action would be I'd be quite happy to make transparent the advice that we'd got. But I'm not going to rule out any options at this point in time, because we know we have a challenge with waste management on the island. We know we've got to do something with the silt from Peel Marina, and I don't believe in closing down options unless you know that they are right to be closed down. And currently there is a possibility that the scientific characteristics of that silt may make it suitable for use as a reclamation material. And honourable members will, of course, remember that at one stage it was contemplated that we could potentially spread that dewatered material on Crossfane Mine as part of the remediation of that particular site. So work is still in progress, Mr. President.